we will have for later on. And let me go back to my screen. Okay, now I hope everybody can see the buyer representation agreement and compensation that it is there. And that is the big elephant in the room. I wanted to go over a few items on this. One, obviously, is the 90-day that you guys should put here on section A1, but also section, E1 4B, which is the big elephant. And I want you guys to, obviously, you have an option of doing percentage or a flat fee. And one of the important parts is the continued right of payment for broker on involved properties. That one is very important because if a property agreement is canceled with you and a buyer, you can still technically get paid on properties you showed, but you have to send them a copy of all of the properties done within 5 days of canceling it. And so it's a bit of a hindrance and it can be a bit of a work, but I think you guys should do that for sure. And I like to put 90 days on this or 60 days, however way the clients and you guys agree, but it should be a long period because we don't want the buyers to use you to do the work and cancel on you and, submit an offer with themselves or an agent they already know. And so that's the biggie of that one. And also the cancellation right. I don't like this 30-day period. It makes it really awkward when you're in a contract for that long where you want to end the relationship. So you can modify the contract to 1 day, and it will make it comfortable for you guys if you want to end the relationship. And it will also make it comfortable for the clients to get into a contract with you, knowing that that's the easy way out. With that being said, this buyer compensation agreement is really hard, and it's going to be a new item, obviously, for everyone to go with the asking buyers to pay for it. I want you guys to think about some stuff before you present this to them. One of them is to try to overcome this is don't pre-fill this contract out. Know it, but go in it blank with the clients. Don't put in the dates. Don't put the commission in. Don't put any of the things we discussed there so that they feel like they're part of the contract, and let them know how long they want to choose. If it's 2 weeks, a month, the full 90 days, let them be in control of that so they feel more comfortable. Now, there's going to be objections that comes on why do I have to sign this? Or do I have a choice of not signing this? At this point, because we are all realtors, we have to have this done, and you could let them know if they go with any other broker, any other agent, they're going to be presented with the same document. Even if they go to the listing agent and ask them to represent them, that listing agent will also present them with the same exact document. And obviously, the percentage will vary here and there, but for the most part, most people are going with the 2.5 still, and I haven't seen anything really change with that. Now, you can let them know they don't have to do this and they don't have to use a real estate agent, but they can represent themselves just like they can represent themselves in a lawsuit. They don't need to hire an attorney. They can go to court and present themselves, but most people don't because there's a lot of variables involved in law, just like real estate. And at that point, it's your job to show value and all the things you do as a buyer's agent to them so that they can make the right decision and understand what you bring into the table. And I have a list of all of the duties as a buyer's agent and listing agent on the website for you guys to download. And that was obviously provided by CAR. So that will help you guys kind of navigate through that. But also, you can let them know, and they are just like a lawsuit, they can hire an attorney that can do the offers for them, write an offer, but every time they want to make an offer, they have to pay that attorney, an hour to 2 hours to write, evaluate, submit, and not every offer, obviously, we know will get accepted. So the cost can be endless for them. And by doing this and having you as an agent, obviously, is going to be more efficient. And with that being said, your next conversation on this is that not necessarily you're going to be paying um paying the commission, because you will be asking it from the seller to pay for it. So, and with that, you should always hold on one second. I am going to, okay, there it is. And with that, you should always show them obviously the purchase contract they'll see, but you're also going to show them the seller, the SPBB, the seller payment for buyer's broker compensation. And you let them know that on every offer that you will be making, this will be included in the contract, and you will do your best to ask the seller to pay for it. And with that being said, whenever you make an offer, before you made it, I'm sure you guys will be in the routine of contacting the buyers, the listing agent, and finding out if they do offer a compensation or not. And that's going to be part of it. And you're going to let them know again, the goal is for them to pay for it. And also the disclosure and modification.
Hey, Tony,
Yes.
quick question. So once a buyer signs this agreement, right, then are they bound to that agent, or are they only bound to that agent for those properties that agent has shown them? So let's say you have a buyer, and I was talking to one of my buyers, and she's like, "Oh, I've signed a buyer's broker agreement with someone over here, but they're only showing her properties in the East Bay. They're not showing her properties outside of the East Bay. Are they 100%?"
What are you done with? Did you break up? Well, I think maybe I understood the question. That one is definitely a gray area. Um, in that portion, it's really hard depends on how far the area is and whether they've signed an exclusive or not exclusive. But if you're wanting to, if it's, for sure that agent from that area is not going to cross over and do things, show properties there, it still will be hard to fight. You would have to sue in that aspect and trying to get the deal. And I recommend not to be honest. If I would highly recommend trying to keep as much of a radius as possible. It's gonna get confusing. And because the buyers are wanting property for them, you may end up doing work for somebody who isn't fully committed to you. And let's say if you've shown a property today, you might not be around tomorrow, right when they call you and they want an offer made. I am 99% sure that they would not wait for you to come back or answer your phone, whether you're in a meeting or showing. They'll contact the other agent to put the offer in. So, and that goes part of one of my other object that I wanted to talk about is that whether we should have an exclusive or non-exclusive buyer agreement, my recommendation is exclusive only, because if somebody is not able to, I'm sorry, there was a few people that were waiting to get into the meeting room and it was not showing up. I apologize. I'm sorry for the few that did miss. I will go at the end and I will go back through the first part to answer any questions you guys have missed. But we are towards the middle of the buyer representation agreement. I kind of went over it a little bit, but I will go over it again at the end so that in case anybody has any questions, I will again go over those for sure. But again, this is I'm at a point that I'm trying to help with the agents overcome obstacles with buyers signing a buyer representation agreement. And I just discussed the SPPB. And with that, you can also show them the modification of terms buyer representation agreement. And so I want you guys, you can use this, and this is not the correct one that popped up. However, you can modify your agreement with the buyers. And for some reason, there should have been, I thought there was, yes, there is. So you're going to change, you can let them know in case a seller is not willing to pay a compensation that was already agreed to your agreement. Let's say you have an agreement with the buyer for 2.5, and you know you're going to put an offer on a listing that offers only 2%, and you have a hesitant buyer that says, well, I have an agreement with you for 2.5. What happens with that? And you could also let them know we can do a modification of agreement for that particular property, and I want you guys to include that property on this so that which is in this section, you're going to put that property address there. So your modification is only for that particular property and not the whole agreement that you guys have. So with that, is there any other questions that you guys kind of had with the buyer representation agreement?
So Tony, I have a question regarding kickback. So, if a buyer wants to have like a 1% rebate
Yes.
of what sellers pays, for the commissions, should it be included in the buyer's representation agreement, or it should be different, separate section?
Yes, so that's a good question. Since this new rule has been implemented, I don't think that portion of clients that want a percentage of your commission is going to work out as much, because the seller, even though they say they are offering 2%, it isn't mandatory for them. It's up to 2%. So depending on how your offer is structured, they may counter back and say, I'll give you 1% or 1.5%. And so to answer that question properly, you would on the no more kickbacks or rebating clients part of your commission because they wanted it. Now you can, in the middle of the transaction, after everything is done and dealt with, a client is, you go through the repair requests and there is a lot of repairs, or they don't have enough funds for title and insurance, or something happens and you're going to credit them for something for the transaction. That can be done still. We'll do a broker demand for that and do it. But before the offer is made, and if they want something from you, your answer has to be, since the change, because the sellers are not bound to offer us a commission anymore, we will write the offer based on however much you and the client have agreed commission to you, and whatever the buyer wants, rebate, you're going to put it in section G1 5E, and we'll put it as seller concessions to the buyer. And I always recommend putting in reoccurring and non-reoccurring items here, so that in case they've asked for too much, it will go there. And so this is the place to put it for them if the buyers are looking for something.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, before I go to the next section, I want to go over some of the things with buyers, and I just want to make sure everybody is aware of it. You cannot show any properties to any clients without a buyer representation and compensation agreement. We need that form filled, the BRBC filled, agreed on with a commission. You cannot, on that form, the BRBC, have a no fee. You cannot do a zero service fee. You're bound to that. And you can make modifications to the agreement, like I said, should you need to, and get things signed with the agreement, but you cannot make any modification to the BRBC, meaning no open-ended, whatever the seller is paying, it has to be an actual dollar amount or a percentage of the sales, so that the buyers are 100% aware of them.
So what you're saying, Tony, that you cannot do it without any commission?
Correct. You can work for free, but I don't know if anybody wants to do that.
Oh, of course not.
So it has to have a dollar amount. And again, there's going to be a lot of clients that are going to be, hesitant on signing these. And so there are the buyer representation agreement, and you have to let them know. You as an agent will know prior to showing the property and prior to making the offer whether a seller will be offering a commission or not, or how much it is going to be. And
Tony,
yes.
I saw it somewhere that there is a code that we can violate if we do zero commission. Somewhere in the NAR code. So therefore, it supports what you said, that we have to charge.
Yes, and the zero commission, obviously, it's just not possible. And also, for you guys to not break that rule, it's kind of written in stone. Your minimum is $595. So you may have mom, dad, cousin, whoever in the family that decides to do a transaction with you, and you want to charge nothing, just like before you guys would credit them all the commission, but now your agreement will be, hey mom, dad, sister, I'm going to show it to you, but my minimum fee is a $595 for doing this work. And you're going to go through the process and do everything, and it's $595, and you guys aren't breaking any of the NAR rules on that perspective also.
So Tony, that is also applicable for representing myself, for the investment property.
Yes, if you're representing yourself, yes, you still have to have a representation agreement with yourself, and you would still have to have the $595 in there, and you would be paying it, either you'll be asking it in your offer on the SPBB to seller to pay $595, or you'd be paying for it at close of escrow, and either one is fine, but we'll have to know everything, and we'll have to make some changes to the transaction checklist and on the escrow tracking form, so we know who's paying now and how it's going to be paid.
Okay.
So one question, Tony. So earlier you said that there's a 2% cap. So if some seller if some seller is trying to pay 3%, can we take it, or there's a cap for that?
So no, I'm sorry. The numbers I have in what I showed you guys, those are all just numbers I punched in. So there is no cap. They haven't put a cap on how much you can charge. You can charge 3% on representing the buyer. You can even still charge 3.5%, 4% if you want, for a buyer, depending maybe the purchase price. They're buying a mobile home or land. You can make adjustments to that. But what is a cap is if you have an agreement with your buyer at 2%, and all of a sudden there's a home you're going to show, and the sell agent says, hey, I'm willing to pay 3% or 2.5%. When you make that offer, and before you show that property, you need to have a conversation with that client saying, hey, the seller is paying 2.5%, and you will use a modification of terms for that property, and you could change the term and commission to that to 3%. And then it will be just for that property to absorb that extra percent or 0.5%. Or your client may say, no, I don't want you to get paid more than that, and I want that percentage. And then that's when you would, put it in the seller to credit them. And, obviously it's just going to get calculated in the seller's numbers, and they'll understand. So that's to answer that question.
Hey, Tony,
Yes.
quick question. So does this apply to commercial properties as well, or just residential to have this agreement in place?
Residential. Commercial kind of had this kind of agreement already in place before, but this is all for residentials.
Okay, so commercial is still the same as it was. It didn't affect commercial, just residential properties at this point.
Yes, anything residential, you don't have to have this agreement with the buyers. And as before, the commercial, there was nothing saying that they're paying a commission, and the buyer's agent would ask for it.
Okay.
So
Tony,
next, yes.
can we also do a property showing and representation agreement? It's form PSRA, which is like kind of a temporary, just for like 3 different properties.
Yes, as actually was my next item.
Okay.
I was literally looking at that. I was trying to find it in here, but I don't know if I downloaded it, but it is. I don't think
Form
I.
PSRA. You can probably open zip forms and it's right there in front of you.
Yeah, I have it right here.
Tony, I had a question.
Yes.
Sometimes when, like, if you have an exclusive that BRBC for 1 or 2 properties, and I'm sure all of us have experienced that the buyer would say, or prospective buyer would say, oh, can we see that some other property also while we are here? What do we do in that case? Do we do a wet sign afterwards, or do we just say, no, we can't show it because we don't have that BRBC?
If you have a BRBC for only 3 properties.
Yeah, if while we are on the field with the buyer, and the buyer randomly says, oh, can we check out another property which is close by, but you don't have, let's say you only had a BRBC for one specific property, but the buyer said, oh, can we check this one out in the neighborhood?
Yes.
Do we do a post-dated one with a wet sign, or?
No, you could get one done right then. You can create a new one, have them sign it, and do it. I have this form right here. I have a single property one also that we created for you guys to. This is not the one. It's this one. I have one that's online, single property buyer representation agreement. We created one. I sent it out. It's online. You could download it right there and fill it out. and have them sign it in your zip form. But yes, you will need it. Otherwise, you're not going to do that. And I'm trying to log into it. It's just taking too long for me to get that the PSRA, which is for pretty much a buyer representation agreement for 3 listings. And you'd put the 3 property addresses there or open houses there, and you'd show them, have the client sign it, and you can do that every 3 properties if you want. Or if again you have a hesitant buyer, you can do the single property one. But I do want to point something out now that we are here, and I've been adding things to my notes to try to get everything as possible. And every day, you know, a new scenario shows up and I'm like, okay, I got to add that too. But another one is, I know we do a lot of new homes, new builder homes. And right now the builders are offering a lot of incentives and commissions for the buyers to bring in a client. So, but up until now, they only refer to themselves and the commission they've given us as a referral fee. But they are using a loopholes now of considering what they're offering agents to bring in clients as a commission. And when you take a client there and you decide to write an offer and get into contract, they want to see your representation agreement form with them to see how much your commission is with the clients. They will not pay you anything more than what you have agreed. I have a lot that are offering a $5,000 bonus incentive and plus 4% commission. So before you decide to go and show properties in any communities on any new homes, I want you guys to contact the listing office and make sure that your agreement is aligned with what they're offering. Otherwise, they will just do a bait and switch on you to bring in the clients and not offer the commission that they were promising. So that said, I wanted to, we talked about, sorry guys, I wasn't an A student in school or high school or college, so I'm doing my best to be as organized as possible with you guys. We talked about
Tony,
Yes.
under the listing agreements, are they gonna have a place that if the seller is offering anything to buying agent or no?
as
Like
of
the commission as a listing agent, when you do list the property, is there gonna be a place that you can put how much commission you're gonna pay the buying agent or no? The buyer's agent?
No, they are not going to be doing that. Sorry, guys. I was trying to let some other people in. Again, I have to keep letting people in for some reason. I thought it was going to automatically do it. No, they are not going to have they are not going to offer a field for agents to, when they go to a listing agreement, to get the sellers to sign. They are not, and not as of yet. There's no talk about it. And that's what the whole change was, is that we have agreed to something which set the price at the house, and the buyers had no involvement in that. So that's what this lawsuit stemmed from. And so no, they will not be doing it, just like it is not going to be any fields on MLS on compensation to the buyer's agent. And they're also not having any fields of concession to the buyers. And I want to make sure we're all aware, concession, anytime you talk to clients or are typing, concession is what you're paying, what the seller is paying to the buyer. And obviously compensation is what's going to come to you guys. So with that, I wanted to touch a couple of things on the listing agreement so that you guys, that will kind of answer that question a little bit. I've tried to combat it, and it's a little bit on the gray side. However, it's still what they didn't want is, again, also it was called commission sharing, and we can't, I want to touch that too. You can't decide to charge 5% on the compensation to the seller's broker and then decide to pay 2% or half of that to the buyer's agent either. This number is what comes to you only. So with that being said, obviously, this section C14B is your commission that you are agreeing to collect from them, from the seller for doing your work. It can be percentage or a dollar amount. This section, I want to make sure it isn't mistaken. I don't like this section. I'm not too fond of it, but nevertheless is here and I want to deal with it. This section is only, and the percentage of it being used is very, very minimal. This is in case you have a listing and a buyer comes to you, says, hello, Mr. Listing Agent. Either they saw the property on an open house or they somehow convinced you to show them the property without signing a broker compensation agreement, which is a no-no, or they just going to make an offer that is subject to viewing the property after contract. Again, I don't like them all, but the only valid one would be if they came to an open house and saw the property on their own and then went home and came back with an offer written on their own documents, which means the listing agent didn't hand them a blank listing agreement, a blank purchase agreement, and have them fill it out and come back. They have to have come in with a contract, like they went to an attorney, have them draft up an offer, or they went home and they used some, generic online contract that they found and came and give it to you. And at that point, you as the listing agent are obligated to present that offer. And if the seller does like that offer and wants to move forward with it, and at that point you have to do your due diligence and do all of the paperwork to provide to the buyer to get the transaction done. And that's when this figure comes into play. C2 4C, additional compensation to seller's broker if a buyer is unrepresented. This does not mean commission to a buyer's agent who writes up an offer for you. And I want to make sure that is not confused in any shape or form. So,
do we need to fill out that section for sure?
You don't have to. You can cross that bridge if an offer comes to you and you have to cross that bridge. But this would be also a good icebreaker to find out how the sellers are going to react on paying anything more than what they're paying the listing agent. And also you'll know kind of how their mindset is if you double in the transaction and a buyer comes to you, says, hey, present me and present my offer. So it's an icebreaker that you can use. It's up to you. I am not made it mandatory yet, as I haven't seen or don't see that many instances for it, but I still want to cover it and make sure it's not mistaken by you get it, an agent being double-ended or a buyer being presented by another agent. And then next section, C3, 4, D2, I would definitely put some, 30 to 60 day in here so that you're kind of protected a little bit there. And listing agreement is kind of, pretty much self-explanatory. I don't want to spend too much time on things that it's not necessary for you to be able to continue business and be active at ASAP. The next item is on section K of the listing agreement. This is also kind of where, let's say you've had the conversation about the commission already and you come here, additional term, you've already kind of felt out the client and you know how their opinion is in regards to paying a commission. If they have shown a willingness to pay a buyer's agent, this is the section I want you guys to use. And and I've sent out an email with it, so I don't spend too much time on it. But seller has advised willingness to offer a 2% of sales price or a flat fee to the buyer. And you can see attached SPV. Because they didn't give us all the forms, we can fill this, the sell SPVB, and then for the buyer's name, we can put TBD, to be determined. And I want you guys to include it in the listing agreement by including it in section 3, marking other, and putting that there. Now, you can use the internal form that I did create for you guys to use, which is a direct compensation from seller. You can go to the listing agreement with this form. It's not illegal, but you can use it, property address, percentage, or dollar amount the seller is willing to pay. And we can put it here, any additional terms. And that can be incorporated also to the listing agreement. And this can be provided to the buyers also so that they're aware of what they're getting. Because I've already seen listings even when a seller is paying $0 commission to the buyer's agent and this listing agent is aware of it, they will not even present the offer to the seller unless the broker, me, has signed their internal compensation agreement form showing $0 to us. And so we can make it as clear as possible. And if your seller is paying $0 and are not going to be doing that, you can also put that in here and incorporate that. They may say, no, I'm absolutely paying $0. And so we can use this also so that everything is kind of in writing and we can do it. But this is part of something and it doesn't go against the settlement because we're not negotiating an offer that we're sharing and we're not obviously posting it anywhere on MLS. And one thing about MLS compensation, I know I bounce around a little bit, but things need to be done. Compensation, either it can be written on form and handed to prospective agents. It can be given verbally over the phone. It can be emailed to them if they ask, but it cannot be posted on the internet somewhere. And as of right now, I have I haven't allowed anyone to do any posting on the internet. Their rule, so that you guys know, it's pretty vague. As it requires, in order for someone to post the commission of their property online, it requires 2 clicks for the consumer or agent to be able to see the commission amount. And please don't ask me why. I have no idea what the reasoning behind it is, but because the internet is pretty hard. The only way it would be done is if it's on an internal server where it requires a username and password for whoever is looking for the commission to be able to see it. Or you would have to have some kind of a site where in order to see this, you have to fill in a form, submit it, and then be able to see it after a click, which unless, again, that page is secured somehow and will not allow any other way around of getting to it, then you're in violation. And I say that because an example is if you go to read some news articles on Fox or other places, a lot of them right now requires you to put in your email address and become a member of them to be able to read the article. But if you copy and paste that article into Google, you're able to read it directly from their sites without entering your information. So with that, they are waiting around to see who messes up to catch them and find them. So for now, I have no, I am not allowing anything online besides an email to an agent, phone call, or a document signed, and we can provide that to the buyer's agent.
What about a text message?
Yes, text message is fine. Yes. If an
Okay.
agent texts you, hey, how much is the commission? Yes, you can text. I'm
Do they
sorry.
have to ask, or can you just say it?
I had situations where when I made an appointment, but I'm in a different state. I have a California license and also Texas. When I made an appointment to show, automatically that agent texted me the amount of commission the seller would pay, and there was no violation with that.
Correct. Yes.
But there was a violation here where somebody put it on a key inside the key box, like a 3% on a key tag, and that
Yes.
was considered a violation.
That's very clever. I haven't thought about the key box thing. And again, all these things keep coming up, and people will make clever decisions. But as of right now, if it's a direct communication with another agent, then yes, it's okay. But not a vague conversation, again, like a sign inside of a house written on a piece of paper on a fridge, or as you walk in, a big billboard, 3% commission. Those are all no's. So for now, unless you're talking specifically to one person, the answer is going to be no on how you're going to be communicating. So the goal is communication to an agent, only one agent, or unless you're in a room with other agents, that's fine, but not a vague one where you're posting it for anyone can see.
If
Question. I've seen somebody posting concession available. Is that okay?
Where?
MLS.
No, that's a $2,500 fine, and they will be nailed for it. On the MLSs have all of them. Some they were going to have the field, but the ones that were going to have a field that said concession yes or no, they've also removed it.
No, in the agent remarks.
Yes, no, unless the MLS has a field for it, that's considered a violation. And I don't know any MLSs that have that that designation. CRMLS being the biggest MLS, they don't have it, and all other MLSs will follow. So if there is, I don't recommend it, using it, and I don't think any of the MLSs we're a member of have that.
if the buyer has to pay the
Go.
some of the funds come up.
I'm sorry, you broke up at the end. What if the buyer has to pay?
Yeah, if the buyer's forced to pay the realtor commission,
Yes.
can they get some of that money out of the loan?
So yes, that was one of my other tips to deal with these things. As of right now, I do loans. So far, the lenders have not had any issues with prices being increased. Yes, so let's say you call an agent before you show a property, how much is your compensation? And they'll tell you it's 1%, and your agreement with the buyer is at 2%. You can have a discussion with the listing agent and your buyer on increasing the price by 1% to cover your 2%, and ask the seller to pay 1% on the SPBB, and your buyer will be responsible for paying for the other portion of it.
And then just one more question for clarification
Yes.
on the buyer representation form.
Yeah.
I've been hearing that you have to actually list every single property that you're going to, but I don't see a spot to put that in.
No, that is only for the presentation to show 3 properties only. And I was trying
Okay.
to pull it up and it did not pull up, and me and that zip form are not getting along that much, but the form is called PSRA.
Okay, but a standard one, we're pretty open. I saw that it was limited to counties and cities. As long as we put the county and city in, then we could go to 12 houses, 15 houses if we wanted to.
Yeah, you can show 100 houses, as long as you're within that 3-month period. And that 3-month period, or whatever the buyer has agreed, you guys have agreed to be in that agreement, is you can show as many properties in that period, no problem. And obviously you can extend that, no problem. And like I said, modify the terms on that at any time with the client. You just cannot be vague on the commission. And that
So you mean that we can have a more wider or blanket agreement with the buyer so that we can show any number of properties in that specific time period? We don't
yeah,
need to list the name of the property, right? Or the address of the property.
no listings of the property, only if you're going to do the one property direct compensation, if you're going to like have an agreement just to show one property, or if you're doing the 3. The rest you're open, you don't have to list anything. The only thing you should be listing on that is the area that you're going to show properties. I recommend largest radius possible, because people will change, right?
Like
Largest
state of
radius.
California.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can do state of California, but realistically, they won't be. So, if it's Sacramento County or Los Angeles County, you can do that. And if there is a neighboring county that you can think that is connected to it, where this buyer may go to and you may show properties, for sure, you can put almost the whole area where your MLS covers, because that's what you can present to them. I wouldn't put an area where, if you're in Southern California and you only have Southern California MLS, I wouldn't do for Northern California. But if you're an agent, and I have some who have both areas, and a client possibly may do that, absolutely put in LA and Sacramento County if you think they may, because you may have an investor, you may have somebody who has 1031 that needs to move, and you don't want to be bound to a geographical area. You may show them other things. So depending on the client and their need, I would do a large radius as possible.
So I have a follow-up question. Like maybe I missed something. On the agreement, you must have this before you, or you're obligated to have this form before you go and show any homes or any listings?
Yes.
What happens if you don't?
I have to tell you that, again, it's me from Texas. We have actual people testing people and violating, and they're not giving warnings. The first violation is already, you have to pay. So you'll never know, especially if you buy leads, if you're meeting random people, they are
Spies.
dinging people for not unlocking a door without that agreement.
Absolutely. I do not trust anyone that unless it's your mom, dad, brother or sister, or cousin and uncle that you know this person for sure, if somebody is calling you out of the blue to do something, consider them all a possible spy to try to get you. Absolutely, you need this form to do it. There's no
Tony,
question about it. Yes.
a quick question. So let's say you're hosting an open house, somebody comes in and says they're not represented. Are you able to send them the disclosures for that property without first having a BRBC in place? So let's say they just randomly go to the open house, you meet them there, right? That's fine. But let's say they say they're not represented and they want the disclosures. Are you able to send them the disclosures for that property without having to sign ratified BRBC?
That's a really good question. My answer to that is you want to find out first is on the open house agreement when they've come in. You will know if they're being represented or not. But at that point, you need to have a discussion with them. They want to see the disclosures. My answer to that is no, especially at this point, because you're gonna have to find out, hey, are you going to be represented by an agent or will you be representing yourself? And obviously on the open house form, it says I'm not represented. So then your next question is, how will you be represented? And how will you provide the offer to me? Based on how their answers is, I would definitely, my answer to that is no at this point, because as soon as you provide them the disclosures, you're acting as an agent. And
That's correct, Tony. Also, on a different angle, I would say no, because those disclosures are actually, flow through agent to agent, and it's a privacy matter.
yes,
If you're providing the disclosure to public, you're you're disclosing things that are private to the sellers. So I would say no to be safe.
yes,
And also, it's a good thing also having this BRBC signed, because it will now institute a discipline with your buyers and sellers. At the beginning, I wasn't really excited, but now our job as buyer's agent in the past is very vague. We're undercut later on, we're being used, but now with this, it's re-educating our buyers now and putting them in place and telling them that it is a company policy. It is the NAR requirement that we have to have this BRBC, or else I'm not showing you anything. And it goes for every agent. And if you meet an agent out there who'll do this for you, they are in violation. And so that puts them in place. They'll take us more seriously.
I agree. Before, you talk to any consumer out there, 9.5 out of 10, they thought we worked for free, and they just like, no, I'm not for free. I'm $500 an hour minimum. I'm not cheap, but you're not paying me for it. Somebody else is paying me for it. But
And
now,
I think this is more for our protection as buyers agent. I mean, I've been in business for 26 years, and I've been used in the past, and we don't have any document that we can hold on to say, hey, why did you go somewhere else? I happened to me 4 times. I think I showed the property, etc. So they decided to, the listing agent, told me he's going to give me a discount. He's going to give me a better price. He'll represent me. It happened in San Ramon one time. So now we have something to hold on to now, and to, wave at their face and say, you can't do that. So I
yes,
think it's more for our protection.
I agree, and I think it just does a little bit more. It's like it's not going to stop everyone from abusing us, but it will stop some, and it will also, it's pretty much like a gate, it'll keep the innocent, the not the real criminals out, but having it there will be more concrete. People will be more committed to us. I think in the long run, it will be okay. Will it make changes to our commission a little bit? Possibly, or it might keep it the same. It all depends. But to cover that asked to question, and that was a really, really, really good question. And I did have some notes here in my my brain, I guess I had come up with something and I wanted to mention, you may have somebody that comes to the open house and says, hey, I want to buy this house. I want the disclosures, and I am not going to be represented by an agent, and I will not be writing an offer, but I want this house. And they may say, I want an offer, who knows, $500,000. It might be over asking price. You can hear it, and what you can, they've already given you all of their disclosures. What you can do is communicate with the seller and have a discussion with the buyers on signing a buyer representation agreement. You, when went to the listing agreement, you have already had some discussions with the sellers. You kind of know how their feelings are on paying a compensation or not to the buyer's agent. They may already be offering a compensation to the buyers, or they may not be offering a compensation to the buyer's agent. At that point, if a client has come and made an offer to you, again, it becomes these gray areas where we're, in my scenario, we have to relay that verbal offer to the seller. If we don't, the seller can sue us, right? So
Tony,
Yes.
I think we can't, as a listing agent, we can't get the buyer's representation signed.
No,
I don't think so.
you can if a buyer comes and yes, no, there is no rules on dual agency. So that's what I'm going to go with on that is if a client is being difficult and is saying no to everything, the only way to deal with that client is having them sign a buyer representation agreement. And for some of you who may have missed it, again, we can't have a $0 representation agreement.
But buyer listing agreement with the listing agent? No, that's my question.
Yes, a buyer can come to a listing agent, say, represent me, and make an offer on that property. That's legal. That has not been taken away.
Correct. Yes.
No, but there is a column, there is a line saying unrepresented buyer in the
Yes.
listing agreement, right?
Yes.
So I thought that because you have this unrepresented buyer in the listing agreement, the listing agent is not allowed to be a buyer's agent.
No.
Yeah, that option, that option is there. So if the agent says no, I don't. I mean, if the buyer says to the listing agent, no, I don't want you to represent me, and no, I don't have a buyer's agent right now. I just want to do this on my own or get a lawyer. That's allowed.
Is it allowed to be an intermediary, or is it allowed to be dual agency? Because how can you have both people's best interest in mind if they're doing?
Well,
yeah, I think
that's a different story. Yeah.
This needs to be verified. I think the very reason why they added this as part of the listing agreement, unrepresented buyers, is to avoid dual agency.
No, in California, dual agency is still intact. Other states it's not allowed, but that wasn't touched at all, right, Tony? I'm looking everywhere. Dual agency is not a part of this.
Correct. No, dual agency was not part of this. And again, that unrepresented buyer is for clients that will, and it's not too many that will happen, but it's for those clients that may have an attorney that will write up an offer for them, and that is an option. And there is also, they may use some generic contracts to do so, but as dual agency, that is still intact. That was not taken away. And that's the unrepresented buyers is for clients that are being difficult or gonna, again, have an attorney or someone write them. You can't dual agent. You can be a dual agent, but you have to do it properly. And let's say and the only time obviously this will happen is if you have a listing and a buyer comes to you, most likely on an open house or calls you somehow from the sign. If obviously they're gonna sign an agreement with you and either agree to something or they want to pay you nothing. And again, you can do it, but you can work for free. So you would do a buyer representation agreement with a dollar amount of $5.95.
Yeah,
If you're going to do
absolutely.
that, you would do that. So you say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my disclosures, but they're like bouncing. Oh, there it is right here. So you would do a buyer representation agreement with a buyer who came into the listing and says, hey, I'm not represented by an agent. I don't want to be represented by an agent so far because they haven't talked to you. And I'm not going to write my own offer, but I want you to write my offer. And, because there will be instances, well, this will happen. Say, hey, I want an offer this dollar amount to you. You're going to have to present that to the sellers. And so you would have to have a discussion with that buyer, say, considering everything, I will present you, but the fee is going to be a minimum of $595. And you can present them, and if the seller is willing to, now you can do a $595 because the reason why a buyer is doing all this is in order to get probably the best deal and not ask much from the seller, which we know that's not really true, but what they did, but this is what they've portrayed to the consumer's mind. You may know that the seller is offering a commission, and you can talk to the buyer and say, hey, this seller is offering a 2% to the buyer's commission. I can sign a buyer compensation agreement with you with 2%, and the seller is paying for it, and we'll include it with the contract and the SPBB. And they may say, great, do it. But they may say, no, I know that the seller is paying 2%. I want that 2% to be deducted, or in their mind, they're already thinking that the seller is paying 2.5%, 3%, and they want to offer less with that percentage. So in that instances, you will have to do an agreement still, and the commission would be $5.95 to be legal.
So if a buyer comes to the open house and says, look, I'm willing to buy this house at 2% less than the listing price, as long as I don't have to pay any buyer's commission, or I don't so then you can just have them sign this $595 and write an offer for them with 2% less
Yes,
overall price.
correct. You can, and if the offer is accepted, then you're good to go, and it's okay to do that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
My question.
Yes.
So, I mean, negotiating is part of the deal anyways. Before this deal happened or now we're talking about it, you can always negotiate. Whether you purchase the property or not, that's a second thing. But you can throw ridiculous offer high or low. It doesn't really matter. How does the buyer that does not want to be represented by anybody, is not writing an offer and making you write an offer for free and not signing anything with you representing them, what kind of legal obligation do you have to represent them or write an offer or do anything? What kind of agencies do you have then at that point?
You can't. Based on this, you can't do it. Based on being a realtor, you can't touch that person.
Right, but you just said that you have to do it. You have to just negotiate $5.95 or whatever dollar amount, thousand.
You would have to have this agreement somehow signed by them with a dollar amount that they're going to give you, either 2% or $5.95 here.
So if they say nope, I don't want it, and I'm not gonna, you need to write an offer for me, and I'm not paying anything, and I want this price.
I'm sorry, based on the lawsuit that's nationwide, this is it. And unless you go to an agent that's not a realtor, then that can be done. Everything we discussed today is because we're all realtors. We're all a member of the NAR. We pay dues so we can have these funny forms and know stuff, how to do it. They can go to an agent that's not a realtor, but they won't have a contract, right? They'll have their own generic contracts and they can work for no money, but you can't. You're a realtor. And if we choose not to be realtors, and I'll touch that elephant in the room also, they are sitting around that Michael Catchmark. I want to not going to say anything, but that attorney, the ambulance chaser, has won, and they have teams and teams of people awaiting to drop out of NAR, and so they can follow them and sue them. As soon as we become not a member of NAR, if I choose, hey, real estate source agent, why are we doing all this? Let's drop it. I'll create my own form. As soon as Michael Catchmark or some other attorney in California sees real estate source, bunch of agents, not a member of NAR, we're going to sue them. We're being protected by this class action lawsuit. And so we're operating this, whether we all want it or not, we got suckered into this lawsuit and we're blamed for something that none of us committed or did, especially working for a flat fee company. But we have to operate by this. Otherwise, the lawsuits are humongous, and I don't want any of us to.
No, so I did not get a clear understanding. So if person does not want to be represented,
Yes.
and this is just a technicality. I don't think
Yes.
we're gonna ever get somebody real client, maybe just a tester.
Yes.
So if they don't want to be represented, they don't want to write an offer, they just give you verbal stuff, and they're not going to sign anything.
I think for an offer, they have to sign something as an
Yes.
offer, right?
They
So,
have
Yes,
so
until they sign that very, essential, the
verbal
very
offers are
initial thing.
generally not accepted, right?
Yeah,
So,
then you
All
cannot do
right.
anything.
You present
Correct.
this form for them to sign. They're not paying anything, but they're demanding for you to furnish a form
You can't do
or
that.
disclosure.
Yeah,
It's like going to
you're
it's
in
like going
control.
to
You're
an
the
attorney.
agent.
Sorry.
I mean,
It's like going.
in worst scenario, you can probably write an offer as unrepresented buyer offer.
No.
How?
Not you
Yeah, you
can't,
can't.
because you cannot talk to a buyer to take information from them and put it in a document and have them sign it. As soon as you ask, hey,
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Buyer, how much would you like to put in an offer? You're acting as an agent. So none of that conversation can be done. The only time the verbal thing I mentioned is if that very, very difficult person comes into the open house or is somehow sees you at a party or in the street or in front of the door, knows you're the listing agent, says, hey, I'm not represented, I want to make an offer, I don't want to deal with any agents, I don't like agents, they suck, they're blah blah blah, make me an offer. Say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, I can do this, and then we need this document signed to represent you. Now, whatever dollar amount you put there is obviously your choice. But unless I have this, I can't really communicate with you. Just like an attorney, you go to an attorney, they're not going to give you advice. They're not going to write something for you. They're not going to give you documents without you becoming a client. And you agree to them to pay them an hourly or a retainer. Just like me, this is what it is. Now,
Exactly.
You want to be difficult and you don't want to pay me anything, $5.95 is the minimum, and I'm gonna put it on SPBB till the seller pays you for it, and that's the closest you can get me to work for you for free, and that's going to be probably the cheapest you're gonna find any real estate agent to do any work for you. And if they don't like that, past that, honestly, I tell them to go write me an offer and come back. And that's what the non-represented client is for. Somebody who comes in with a handwritten offer, go write me a handwritten offer, write it on a napkin, come present it to me, and I can present it to the seller. But I cannot ask your name, put it on the contract, dollar amount, you want the dishwasher, none of that. I can't do that. I can't even hand you a blank offer for you to go fill it out.
Mhm.
26 years ago, a lady realtor told me, you have to control your clients, Ricardo. And I learned from that. You
But
make them
that's
feel
not
that
about
they're
the
in
client.
control, but
It's about
yeah.
the system right now trying
Yeah, I mean,
to
yeah, but Tony
educate
is
really
right.
hard
But
clients.
Tony is right. I mean, without that, and they'll respect you for that because you stand on your ground in a very nice way, in a very polite way. They want, somebody wrote it here that says you need to show value by having you jerk, by having them, allowing them to jerk you around. You know, this is where we're at. This is how we, and with this BRBC, we'll know if the buyers are serious or not. You know, if
Exactly.
they're willing to sign it, that's a serious buyer.
I mean, how
Yeah,
often do
no,
you
I'm
get those
thinking it's not a
people?
client. It's more of quick money
Customer.
Scenario.
or violations.
Yeah, I
That's
understand.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're doing, but I have thought about it, and I 100% guarantee every commission check that you guys will make for the rest of the year, that there will be a consumer like that I'm sure I'm gonna get a call from. You guys might not get across, but one of you will come across one or several of them, and I guarantee you this scenarios will be coming up for the next 6 months of people coming and wanting exactly what we're discussing, because not because of the rules, because of the TV, because CBS, CNBC, and all those people kept,
YouTube.
yeah, don't sign this. This is not good. Somebody who's not even a real estate agent are saying don't sign this, or the ones that are making videos don't do this are not realtors and are doing this. But
Yeah, they
most
want their,
agents are.
they want their YouTube money. If I also may say that I think, Tony, that it will be very popular for common consumers to just say, hey, you know what? We have a way around this. Let's just go directly to open houses. So I think listing agents, they're going to be ready to tackle this, because a lot of people's mentality will be simple mentality. It's like, I just go to open house and convince the listing agent, you know, that do this and do, the creative way. And I
Yes.
think that's going to happen more often. So listing agents out there, I'm not a listing agent. So I think get ready to how to tackle that. They want dual agency. And I think and when it comes to preference in dual agency, I'm not happy with it, but it's an entirely different story. But we have to face it. We're going to have to tackle the thing.
I think a huge part of the problem is that in light of the recent changes, a lot of buyers, all they hear, they now think that they now have to pay their buyer's agent, which we all know
Yes.
is not the case. But they think that, oh, I'll go straight to the listing agent, so I won't have to pay my buyer's agent.
Yeah.
And get a really good deal, which, as we know, it's not always the case.
I have this discussion with another agent, and I said, get ready, a buyer's agent, because I said, I've been doing loans for 26 years. And when I sit down with my clients and talk to them about, these are my fees, these are the bank fees and everything, right away, they're so sensitive about that. How much more today when you sit down with them and say, hey, I need to be paid a certain amount of money, a percentage, and this and that. And this is what somebody said, that, you have to show value. And on top and this, underneath this, a lot of new agents that are not experienced will go away, because now you got to show value now. Why? Why am I asking you, what value can I bring to the table? Why am I asking you to do this? And it's all up to you to kind of wrap things with, explaining that it will possibly come from the seller, any differences, this is what we're gonna do and whatnot. And they'll take you more seriously. And this will weed out a lot of agents that are just fly-by-nights, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you know what?
Absolutely.
I just recently had a buyer that during the consultation I had to present the agreement, and I explained the whole new rules, and I'm gonna call every listing that you favored before I show you and find out how much the commission would be. But there are going to be some that they are not going to, some sellers that choose not to pay any commission. And I know you, waited 5 years to collect enough money for down payment. You don't have enough to pay me. But I can't, I have a threshold. I can work maybe for if they offer 1.5, but if it's 0, I'm not going to work for free. My client said to me, even if I favor that, if they're paying you 0, I don't want to see it. So I said, can I put that in the listing, in the buyer rep agreement, that you have agreed not to see any of the properties that are not paying buyer's agent commission. And he signed it with that comment in there. Right? And he didn't even really want to go see it if they're not paying any, because he couldn't afford to pay himself. So when you explain all this, sometimes they're, if they're like working with you and they know that you're going to have their best interest in mind, you're going to help them through every step of the way with the inspections and negotiations, to them, they'll skip maybe the homes that are paying nothing.
Absolutely. And most transactions, even up until this change, we do a lot of transactions, but double ending, even for most companies, it doesn't happen that often. And for the most part, listing agents, not, more than half are not, when you go to an open house, are not the listing agent. It's an agent doing an open house, trying to get business. And that listing agent, that open house agent, say, they're going to have the same documents you will, and they're going to want to get paid. And like I said, after a few months, that percentage of clients who thought that they can bypass us and just go to the listing agent, all of them will be met with huge disappointment, and the market will, flatten out a little bit. It's going to be rocky a little bit. And like you said, a lot of the clients are still going to trust you. That putting, in this section, it says buyer does not have sufficient fund to pay broker on the buyer's agreement. Yes, we check that, and we can put that in terms that we're not going to look at anything that the seller isn't offering. And it's at that point for us to also have a conversation. The home that isn't paying any commission may be the dream home of that buyer. And I, as an agent, want to work hard, and my goal is to get you your dream house, not your second home. And I don't want you to be able to, you can qualify for this home, you can get it, except the only thing preventing you from getting into this door is my commission. I don't like to sleep. I can't sleep at night time like that. So the conversation with you will be, if a seller isn't providing a commission, based on your agreement, you may have 2.5% for the buyer to pay. You can modify it for this listing agreement and ask for 1.5% commission and increase the price by 1.5%, so you can get your client into this house. And that would be the only way to do it for them. So again, the lenders are not questioning, because VA loans, you can't pay for fees. So even if on a VA loan, the buyer cannot pay for it, and it always has to come from a third party. And so the lenders are okay with prices being increased to blend in the commission for the agent into the sales price, so it can be financed. So if they can't afford, either we're asking the seller, and if seller says no, we can increase price. And you're gonna know, for the most part, if a seller is paying or not, because you're gonna conversate with the listing agent before you put in your offer. So it's going to require a lot of work, a little bit, but it can be leveled out, and we can still satisfy those clients who are not going to have the money to pay for our commission. And that's going to be a lot, where we're going to see people have the money, or higher end and a little bit lower, a little bit lower than higher end properties. Other than the rest, those consumers are going to need to pay, because as I do loans, I've been doing loans, I'm, loan officer. Your conversation with the client that you're dealing with so far has always been, hey, you also have to pay a loan officer a commission, 1%, 2%. It gets blended into the rate. And with that being said, also, the rates are come down a little bit, but this commission, I'm throwing something else included in there to cover some of that, is your conversations with your lender or your client's lender should be, hey, on the rates you're offering my client, and as you see our rate sheets, I always put down the credits or costs on it, but I'm also putting those at really minimal rates, the best rates possible. But if, let's say, a client qualifies for the par rate, which is the best rate, the lowest rate the lender is offering with no cost of 5%, that rate can be bumped up to, let's say, 5.375. Payment differences are on that much is probably maybe like $70 on monthly payment. But with that bump in the rate, the lender is able to credit the clients now $3,000, $4,000 in rebates from the loan. That rebate from the lender can be used to cover real estate commission, real estate agent commission also, not just closing costs. So when you guys talk to us, if we're doing the loan or whoever is doing the loan for your client, that's going to be part of your conversation now. What can you do? Or, you need to train the loan officer. Say, hey, I need you to talk to my client, give him options of a little bit higher rate possibly, so that they can see how much credit they can come to cover costs somewhere. And so that's a pretty good point. Anything else in this subject? Questions in this matter?
Hey, Tony, I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding posting the commission. Can you post it in a flyer? I read some, I mean, it seems like on a flyer should be okay, right? It's not public.
It's a gray area, and my answer to that is no, unless it's on a flyer that you have made for a real estate agents only, and you provide that flyer to John, who calls you or emails you and asks you about it, or asks about your listing, then you can provide it to that. But you cannot have that flyer inside the house. You cannot have that flyer hanging on the post. You can't have that flyer on social media. You can't, I don't know anywhere else if I missed the place. You can only hand it, email, text it to another agent, but it cannot be a shotgun to any agent who wants to see it.
Got it. Okay. Another question is, so let's say I have a listing, the seller is willing to pay 2%, and then the buyer agent, didn't really ask upfront like what the commission is, and then he comes forward and say, "Oh, plan to submit an offer. Is the commission 2.5%?" And in this case, do I just say no, it's 2%, or how should I respond in terms like, oh, it's negotiable, or I mean, I don't want that 0.5% to be a deal breaker, right? So, like, do I just like straight up tell them it's only 2% and let the buyer's agent deal with their client?
This is before they submit the offer?
Yes.
Yes, if a client, they call you and they were saying, hey, I want a 2.5 or insisting on 2.5, your answer is no, the seller has shown interest and is shown willingness to pay up to 2%. Now, remember again, it's up to 2%. The seller, they call you and say, hey, I want, how much is the seller paying? Your answer is up to 2%. Your listing might be a $500,000 home, and they come in with $400,000 purchase offer price. Your seller has the right, and he has the right to give them 2% still, or rebate or counter and say, no, I'm going to give you 0.5% or 1% because your offer wasn't full, and my commission that I'm saying is up to. Before, when we had the offers of commission to us on MLS, that was because the listing agent had already gone to the seller and had agreed to a 5% commission to that listing agent. So when you went to the listing appointment before, that 5% you wrote on the listing, that was for you. You could have given 0.5% to the buyer's agent on MLS and kept the rest of the 4.5%. Because we weren't questioning it and it was never up to the compensation to us, was because, again, it was coming from the agent it was a shared commission to the buyer's agent, and the listing agent was bound by a contract by putting that dollar amount or percentage on MLS. That's why that was our contract. We would print the MLS, say, hey, no, you put in 2.5% here. I want 2.5%. But now it's up to. And if your offer isn't good, be prepared for the seller to counter you. Just because you have an offer and they said they were going to pay 2% does not mean that you will get 2%. Be aware of that. And I don't want don't you guys be surprised, you know, it will come back that way for sure. So, and I don't know, some agents may not know this and they may not discuss this to their sellers and force them, but I'm teaching you guys because we're going to be on the listing side, and you know, it's just part of life. Your sellers don't have to pay if it's a really horrible offer and they're asking for goats and chickens. You know, our answer is no, I'll give you a goat and half of the commission that I was planning on giving you. So that's that one. Any other questions about this? These are all I wanted, you know, everybody will have these kinds of questions, so don't be shy.
Tony, you know how we do auto prospecting, like this automated listing being sent to buyers. But again, you're acting as an agent there. So in those cases, if you have any buyers up for auto prospecting, do you still need to have this buyer representation signed?
So the answer to that is no, but it's up to you guys, because if it's just the system sending it, you know, you're not doing much work, and the buyer representation agreement form, this big change, the big elephant, is required before you open the door to show them the house, the first listing. So you can conversate with a person, a client, talk to them about real estate, everything that you know, you could share all your beans. That's sales pitch. They ask you questions about a property that's out there. You know, you can answer them questions, but again, it's up to you how much you want to get into it, because you're getting into, you know, starting to do work, and you want to try to get him into a contract as soon as possible to have him committed to you. It's just like a listing agreement, you know. Before, a seller would come and ask you, hey, how's the neighborhood? How much are the prices? You know, you would chit chat with them for a couple of months because you knew they're about to list, but you can't run and have them sign a listing agreement right away. But your goal is to push that person into a listing agreement so it's yours, so it's, you know, they're committed to you. Same goes for the buyers. You know, I would have preliminary talks with them, but I would try to put this in front of them as soon as possible so that you can feel them out, because your job is to obviously find out if somebody is even willing to buy or how they're going to react. And so it's a good icebreaker. I would start it, but if it's prospecting, to answer your direct question, you can have it go to them. It's the law does not, or the agreement with the settlement doesn't say you can't send listings to them. It's right before you show a home, but I would start having the conversations with your list and start that conversation, because you don't want to wait till last minute and all of a sudden they call you, hey, I want to go see this house today, and then you have to tell them, hey, you have to pay me also. That's gonna ruin that relationship.
So I have a question. How, maybe I haven't seen it lately. How does the Redfin and Zillow, they used to have appointment available to see 11 o'clock. You did that at 9:30. How do they implement the change? How is this going to affect like that competition?
All those stuff got done. As far as I know, they've been pulled. They'll
So
have
what
clients
happens like online? You just like, you want to see the home, Redfin or Zillow, whoever advertises, they're setting up an appointment. Client will sign an agency before they even go there.
They will be. I honestly, I'm not sure how Redfin is operating, but this
No, because that's a huge competition. They're like, they were trying to. I sold to a couple of them. When I listed it, I've had appointments and I had offers from people on my listing, but they just got me from from the internet. So how does that affect them? Like the clients that are just going for a showing, or to view the tour of the house. Now they sign that agency.
Yes.
Are they gonna be bound by
So-
3 months, 6 months, whatever, and then
Is your
they
question
educated about it?
regarding the buyer agent, or your question
Yeah,
is?
the buyer. Let's say I want to see 123 Elm Street. I go online, I see Redfin used to. So you want to see it at this time today, right now. You click. Joe already showed up and showing a home. Now they need an agency. So do they have that in place now? And like if I click,
So-
I go
So
sign
Redfin,
before then
Redfin, so I have used Redfin for other states, like, when I'm buying not in California. And Redfin has a standing agreement for showings. I mean, as when you log in and you want to select properties for showing, they have you as part of their as part of their overall
Agreement.
agreement. They have an agreement saying that you will pay a certain amount, like 2,600 or something, as a minimum buyer's commission if the seller is not paying anything.
they already had that in place.
Yes, they have it in place. And when you are
Well-
signing an offer with them, you sign that agreement, commission agreement with them.
Okay, so now that is this exclusive agency that they
It's
cannot go to
non-exclusive.
another
With
one?
Redfin, it's always non-exclusive
Okay, so it's not
for
affecting us
that
that much.
property.
Okay.
It's for that property only.
Yeah.
Not the
Okay.
properties you show. They show.
Usually do a single property one, and you can do that too. And we have a single property agreement.
Right.
But yeah, it's not. As you know, Parveen is saying, it's not exclusive, and they are, it's just for that property. But again, we're having to watch all of our competition and know what they're charging. If you're $2,600, I don't know what it is going to be in California, but yes, it's some of our, some of those savvy buyers will go. But remember, Redfin was here before this, and they were offering all kinds of bells and whistles, and you guys were all still making business. So again, not everyone will go to Redfin. Not everyone will go to Remax or KW. Our clients are not going to go because all those other places are going to be charging more. They're not going to have a $2,600 minimum at Remax, KW, Century 21. I guarantee you that. So business, the minimum may get set by some of these companies, but 26 is, I don't think any of you guys want to do anything for $2,600.
Well, this is just a comment. This is not a legality. I mean, we
No,
live
but,
in Sacramento, like California, or other markets that are very high and very in huge demand right now. Anybody got offer accepted? Like writing 10 offers. Think about it. I mean, it's really complicated just to get a house. Fierce competition, cutthroat. So, do you think it's gonna be like just a commission if somebody doesn't want to pay commission? It's not like you're trying to buy something that's readily available. It's not a buyer market.
No, I think the
So
Redfin will try to get the buyer's commission if the buyer's commission is available from the seller.
Yes.
So
Yes, so-
no mistakes about that, right? So
Yes.
that 2,600 that I was talking about, that only kicks in if the seller does not pay anything as a buyer's commission.
right.
So that's the minimum that they are going to do a business with. But if there is a buyer's commission, then they do take the buyer's commission. And in the
Split it.
past, they used to transfer some of that buyer's commission
Yes.
to the buyer. But I think if that is illegal now, then they probably, have changed that. I don't
It's
know.
not illegal. They can do that if they want to. It's just different ways of writing it. But I think it's not illegal to do it. You can still share, not share, credit the buyer from your compensation for closing cost or non-reoccurring cost. Still, you preferably it's not part of your agreement, because that should only happen if the client ends up needing it. And if the client needs it and we know it, it should be in the other section in the offer where we're asking from the seller to pay a concession to the buyers on G1 5E here. We would put it here. Any other questions? This is all, I want everyone to have everything out. Because
Actually, it just comes down to setting very clear expectations with our buyers, because everybody's with the same representation agreement. So I've told my buyers I'll try as much as possible to get paid from the seller, unless the seller is not paying. But again, you have to take a situation at a time. I recently sent an off. I mean, I asked a listing agent, what's the buyer commission? She goes, "Our seller is not paying." I sent an offer at the listing price, asking for 2% commission, and it got accepted with the SP with the 2% commission. So
yes,
sometimes listing agents are not even familiar with their own principles, with their own sellers, what they're going to expect. And again, it all depends on the market, like how many offers are there, what kind of market it is. So we just have to take those chances by setting very clear expectations with our buyers that we'll try our best to get it from the seller. If not, then it falls back on you. What do you want to do?
and remember, they don't, and I don't want this, like, if there's somebody's recording and it comes out 10 years later, this is not antitrust stuff. That's how we got into this place. The client's consumer, based on this lawsuit, they haven't been given a choice. If I don't know too many brokerages with real estate agents, especially in California, in our market, that are not realtors. If you're a reputable broker, agent, you paid for the due and you're a realtor, and again, they don't have a choice, unfortunately. It's either you or somebody else. And remember, everybody else, KW, Remax, they're not going to allow their agents to do minimal. They want chunks still. They still want 2.5. They're still pushing their clients and their agents for 2.5, 3% commissions, even on the buyer side. So remember, they don't have a choice, consumers. They have to use you still. It's just semantics of who's supposed to pay. And at the end of the day, let them know the buyers, they were still initially paying for the commission because it was in the purchase price and they were taking out a loan for it and it was being distributed. It's just an accounting change that's really has happened, and now you're being forced to be aware of it and make an agreement that I'm gonna get this much. And we've had surprises where clients have said, I didn't know you were going to make this much money. I didn't agree. And I've had it, and they've questioned it, and it's like, you're not even paying for it at that point because it was an accounting change. So that's that. I have one thing I really want to talk about, is really new to this contract, and it's really important in what we're doing, is in section L of the RPA. It is section L4 8D, and that's for insurance. Insurance contingency. This wasn't in place before as much, and it wasn't something that any of us really thought about. However, going forward, it is something to think about. It should be just like your loan contingency, just like your inspection contingency. It should be considered just as serious, because it's because insurance companies have red flagged a lot of areas, and I'm sure you guys have your own homes. A lot of insurances have tripled, quadrupled. My own property, I'm in El Dorado Hills, and just a few months ago, my insurance from my house was going from $2,800 or $4,000 a year to almost $18,000. Now, if you're purchasing a home and all of a sudden the insurance bills come this high, and the client, your buyer, the lender, and you guys are not able to shop, find an insurance company that will cover this property for either less that client isn't going to qualify for the loan. And their debt to income ratio is out the ballpark. So I want to make sure when you guys are doing non-contingent offer, removing contingencies, it's got to be part of your conversations. Have you shopped for the loan? Has it been done? Do you have an actual quote? And we want that. You have properties that may not even get insured anymore. So insurance can kill a deal if it's not shopped for in time, because if you remove it after the 17 days, and sometimes, if a lender isn't working hard enough, and usually this scenario, this issue pops up during the loan, but I'm not the lender for all of your transactions. So you need to be on top of the lender. Hey, have you gotten insurance from the borrower? Is everything done? You may have a property that does not look like in a flood zone. However, it's in a flood zone and they want the insurance. If the debt to income ratio for that client does not have room, it will break the deal. The lender is going to say, I can't fund this loan. If the rate can't go any lower, there's got to be some manipulations with that loan to make that debt to income ratio to come down. Again, insurance is huge. Just because you want insurance doesn't mean you get it. Just because one company offers insurance doesn't mean all of them will. And just because you or your client go to an insurance agent does not mean that insurance agent has access to all of the market for insurance. Like when you go, as an example, when you come to me, and I don't like to use me, I'm not trying to sell our services as loan, but if you're coming to me as a lender to do a loan for your client, I have several different lenders that I look at. We know, not just me, our loan officers, we're aware, okay, this client has these criterias, so I'm going to go with these couple of lenders first to see, because I know they fit the parameters. We have markets for different lenders, different borrowers with different lenders. You may go to a broke insurance agent who only sells one product. If you go to Farmers, they only sell Farmers. State Farm. You may go to an agency where they have only access to a few insurance brokers. Me, again, I'm using myself as an example for my house. I went through the list of insurance companies. Every single one of them would say no. I would even go online just to fill out an application online. As soon as you put the address, they would just automatically say no. So and if you need help, please let me know. I can maybe help with that in that situations. But I was able to luckily find one person to give insurance, even though I have several people who are my friends. They own brokerages, they couldn't do it, and their answer was, it was the $15,000, $18,000, or go somewhere else. And only a friend and a good insurance person that cares about the client is going to tell you, hey, go somewhere else and find something else, because there might be something else out there, but my option is 15,000. So your clients might come back with a huge number and they didn't shop enough possibly to get a better deal. So you guys may have to start doing some insurance legwork for them and knowing some people where we can refer to or come to me, and I can, help with that as much as I can with directing you guys to somebody to get them insurance. But I wanted to touch that insurance is very, very important. Again, if those clients that are loose and they don't mind and they understand that you're going to put in an offer, an SPBB on all your offers to get paid a commission, my recommendation is obviously to have the highest commission agreed with them. And if you need to lower it, you can, based on whatever the sellers are paying. And I'm just going over some of the quick notes. Is there any other questions? Because I wanted to go back quickly to the beginning so that I can touch up on some of the things I said in the beginning in the first 15 minutes that some agents may have missed?
During the listing agreement, should we encourage the seller to provide compensation to the buyer's broker?
The answer to that is it's going to be a not a yes and not a no.
I
Your
get it.
answer
I know what
should
you
be-
mean.
Yeah, my answer is you should educate your client. Let them know, hey, for the past 15, 20 years, if you look at all of the MLS data that's been sold, all the properties sold, over 85 to 90% of the properties all offered a compensation to the buyer's agent, and over 50% of them almost offered a concession to the buyers. So that's your job as an agent, is in the listing agreement to have that conversation, let them know about the change and let them know about the importance of it, and educating them that, hey, you need to do this because, especially if you're selling a $400,000 home, $350,000 home, we know for sure that unless an investor comes in, cash buyer, that client is going to need money. So if you're listing in a listing agreement for a $1.5 million home, your conversation about the commission is going to be a little bit different than the one for $400,000, because we know that demographic buying, 99% is going to need help with the agent's commission. But if it's a $1.5, $2 million, people are buying cash, some of those consumers are not going to be affected for it. And with those, again, I would have the conversation with them, but we cannot force them, push them, really become a timeshare sales pitch about having to pay the commission. Our goal is educate and move on, because again, we don't know who the listing people are. We don't know if they're doing it on purpose to see what you're doing, but those are the conversations.
Have you seen buyers pay for the buyer's agent?
Yes.
Up to these last 12 days?
I was going to actually let you guys know that was before I moved on, I literally wrote it right here. Yes, so I want to let you guys know, since this started, I've already sent out 2 broker demands with the buyers paying the commission, and both were at I think somewhere around the $10,000 range. So for me, I think that's going to be a kind of a midfield for what is going to be a commission for average prices that we're dealing in this market. For us, somewhere around that ballpark, if it's going to be a cash coming from a consumer. And that price range for those homes, I think we're in the 500-600s, if I can remember clearly.
That's impressive. Even 10,000 for a buyer, that's impressive.
Yes, I was impressed, and the buyers are going to pay. And I have seen a couple of offers that have come in from our listings that the agents wanted me to review the offers, where I saw the SPBB was not marked, which meant the buyer is going to pay the buyer's commission on whatever listing that we had. I wanted you guys to know that your buyer's compensation agreement, buyer representation agreement that you have, that when you make your offer, page 5 of it, which discusses the commission compensation confirmation of it, this page should be incorporated and included with your SPBB and your offer when you submit it. You don't want them to ask you for it, and you don't want them to counter you for it. So you want this to be provided, because if this is not provided, even though you have a SPBB, you have it in the contract, your buyers have signed it, they don't have to pay you if you do not have this form. Again, you need.
So when we're the listing agent, we need to ask for this too, if they don't get it.
Yes, as a listing agent, you can start asking for it. it's going to become customary where it's included. So I'm teaching you guys to include it. And yes, if it's not included, because not every agent is up to par yet with this being so new, you're gonna want this, because you don't want them submitting an offer. And again, it's not really us, but it's negotiation. And that agent, the buyer's agent, may not have one to sign, and doesn't want to sign one, doesn't want to follow the rule, and doesn't want to be part of the team and do what we're supposed to all do, and isn't doing it and just submitting offers hoping for it to catch. But you want them to do it. And again, these forms are like gates that keep the the honest people out. If they don't have it and you're nagging at it for them, they'd have to sign this and send it to you. But they may have a buyer that's refusing to do this. They may have that one particular difficult buyer, and they may not be able to provide this to you. And then that would come to our, up to our discretion on what we want to do. The seller can accept the offer without it, and then make it part of the requirements later, like on the counter. Hey, I want this done after I accept this, or later on. But I would recommend it upfront before doing it, to make sure that buyer is aware of it, just for our protection purposes. I don't want any loopholes to point a finger back to us. So we want
So
to
if I do 3% on that form, and then in the offer it's 2.5%, you said I have to do a modify compensation form in the zip forms. For sure, you have to do that.
If your agreement is 2.5 with the buyer and the seller is paying 3%, yes, you have to modify your agreement. You have to change this 2.5 to 3% to get the percentage.
What about vice versa? I ask 3% from the buyer, I get 2.5%. I don't want the buyer to pay the extra 0.5%.
You don't necessarily have to make a change if you're getting paid less, but your buyers may want to, and will, if they're somewhat savvy, they're gonna want you to make an addendum to that and change it and modify it to 2.5, because you never know. There might be I don't think anybody from our team, nor will I allow it, if if it's not modified, and if you had an agreement for 3 and the seller is paying 2.5, and you conveyed with the buyers and you've accepted it, but decide to change it later and force them to pay the 3, I can't, unless I can't allow that to happen. So if I'm gonna force them to 3, we would have to sign it. But if it's 2.5, we don't have to, but the buyers may want it so that they're not in some kind of a contract, then yes, you'd have to do it.
And what's that form called?
It is called disclosure and modification to the buyer representation agreement right here.
Oh, okay.
BR.
Name. Okay.
Yes.
So Tony, quick question. So you said that there's this page 5 that we need to send in, and if we have a modification like what you said with the recent new builds that have offering like say 4% plus agent bonus, do we have to send this and the other modification in together with the offer, and how does that work?
You would send both, and the modification showing that you have increased your commission. So now you would have to send both, showing both increased on it, or you guys can use this form if like, let's say we know you're going, you have an agreement with them, normal buyer agreement, and you're going to all of a sudden show them a new build home. You can do the modification, and obviously for the modification you must put the property address on there, so that it is clear that this modification is for this property address. I want to make sure you guys got.
But it's not on there. I don't see it. Where is it? Where does it say that? Am I looking at the different form? Disclosure and modification to buyer representation agreement. It's just buyer broker dated, commencing, expiring. That's it, and a signature.
I know you guys gonna have to shove it in there in the
Oh.
where is the link for it? You're gonna have to put it in right here for the real property or manufactured home described right here. And then you're gonna put in dates here, but you're gonna put the property address here, or you're going to include it here somewhere. Unfortunately, they have not given us all of the
That's
tools.
crazy. That's such a
I
vague
know.
form.
I know. And so, and that's why I kind of created this. You guys can do the modification, or you can use the single property and submit it into them with the builder. If you're going to be doing, a modification for this single property. That's why I made this one to make it a little bit easier. I also put additional terms in here specifically for the builders. So, it's hard for the builder to, we know which is the address sometimes, and, they may have one address, but it might be, we were going to go show them one property that you've come to present from the builder, but they may end up picking a different model, different size, different section. We'd use this one and we can put in the community in there. You guys would put the property, lot number or property, but then in here, you guys would include any property within this builder's development. So that way we kind of cover our aspects with that builder and move on. And again, everything we're discussing here, some of these tools. Hold on, my screen sharing was paused for some reason. Share. Okay. So that's to answer that question for the builders. Any other concerns?
All these have to be part of the package. Like when we close the deal, it has to be included in the final, like the final package. For the
Yes.
particular property, or for all the properties that you have shown to the buyer, this particular buyer who's closed on.
If you're going to do single one, or 3 yes, you're going to have to include them all in your package.
Okay.
And I've updated the transaction checklist. I don't know if you guys have all seen it, but it is extremely long. I did my best to not make it so long, but there's so many different scenarios where it's really hard to have one scenario. So the disclosures, all of them are there. I also did it so that all of the acronyms are there. I'm getting a little bit too old to remember 20 more acronyms, and they all have the same letter almost in them, just very different. So I have them there just for quick reference for you guys in the transaction checklist in case you need it. I was trying to see if I can show it to you. I will open it. So that's there. If there isn't too many questions, I wanted to just touch base with what I went over. Again, some of the key things: you cannot show any properties. You cannot open the door to show anything without your buyer representation agreement. It cannot be for $0. Your minimum is $595, and it cannot be open-ended. It can't be whatever the seller is offering. It cannot be charted where if the seller is giving this, then that has to be clear, a clear percentage, a clear dollar amount. So that's very important. You cannot, as a listing agent, if somebody comes to you is being difficult, hand them over a listing agreement blank for them to fill it out. That's a big no-no. So that's a no. To help combat this, all of this we conversated, don't pre-fill the buyer representation agreement. Go in there unfilled so that the buyer feels that they have control and are part of the agreement. Again, it has to be for 90 days. It can't be anything more than that. Only thing is, if it's a corporation LLC that you're representing, then the agreement can go longer than that. Most of the stuff on it, you know, we discussed the type of properties and all that, but this location we discussed, I again would keep it as high of a radius, biggest radius possible to be able to represent yourself. And I would not do anything besides an exclusive representation. Non-exclusive representation as a buyer, to me, is a waste of time. If they're not willing to commit to you, there is no reason why you should commit to them. And if they're not willing to do this, that means they have an intention to use you. So this will weed out a lot of potential clients that want to use. So radius we discussed. This amount of compensation on E1 4B is what you are collecting. This is what you can get. This is not a commission that you are sharing with another agent that's bringing you an offer. So 2.5%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever you put here, this is your money. It will only go to Real Estate Source and to you, or obviously if you're getting paid from escrow, it will be split from escrow, some to Real Estate Source and the rest to you only, unless there is like something you're paying for the client that we've invoiced, but the money is not going to go to another agent. I like to put in a high number here, 90 days, just to keep the clients as committed as possible. Then that's the continued right for payment for broker involved properties. And that's if you show a property to a client today and 90 days later, they get into contract somehow with that, you should still get paid, even though your agreement has expired. And that's that one. This also is, I don't like, to be honest, and I'm not sure how you guys want to, it's up to you, but it's the cancellation right and notice. Both party can cancel this agreement at any time, and you should always let your clients know, especially if they're having hesitancy on signing this agreement. Say, hey, this cancellation is no problem. You can cancel it anytime. And this cancellation, 30 days. So the contract is 30 days to cancel. I'm not too fond of that. I don't want to tell you, hey, I'm done being your friend. I don't want to be your agent anymore, but still be committed to you for another 30 days. I'm not sure if that makes a lot of sense. And I think they had it in their mind somewhere to keep those properties that you showed to a client and have this continued right to go into effect. But that's weird. If the client has an exclusive right with you for another 30 days, that means that buyer can't go out and shop for 30 days. They can't go sign another exclusive agreement with another buyer. That to me is, I don't understand this concept of it. So it's like, yeah, you can cancel, but not, you still have to wait 30 days before it cancels. That makes our conversation much harder and difficult. This, I think, is easy to swallow. If I showed you a property, I discussed a property with you, I gave you my opinion about a property, I was an agent on a property, I want to get paid for 90 days because I did all the work. And if you're going to run with some other agent, I did all the work. So I want to get paid for it. But if you don't like me, you want to leave, one day, I forgot to mark this box, but you have to mark, or if it's there, you can leave in one day. And that should help alleviate some of the problems. But remember, you have to, within 5 days of this cancellation, whether you're canceling or the buyer is canceling, you have to provide them a list of properties that you were involved in so you can get paid. And it sounds a little bit not fun, but you got to do homework. You got to provide them the list, have them agree that I shown you these properties. So in case they go to another agent, you have some room and they have something in their brain that they can, get sued. But honestly, I have no idea yet on how we would even collect.
I was just going to ask you that question. How would we collect the money? It would have to be through a lawsuit.
You'd have to sue. There is no way around it. You can now, I don't know. Maybe we could put a mechanics lien on that property because we did some work, but it's a far-fetched one. But again, I don't have an answer for that yet. And obviously, there isn't one really besides lawsuit, and there is no case laws on it yet that will really apply yet. So to be honest, we're SOL. All this is a fence that we can't, that an honest person can jump over. And I tell this to everyone, and I hate to say this, but this contract is easier to get out than our phone contract, than our cell phone contract,
Yeah.
So,
and over here, it's we have that protection period, and we can put 90 days, 120. But the minute that buyer signs with another agent, that protection period is null and void. So all they have to do is go and sign with somebody else. And even if you show the property and send them the list, all that, once they sign with someone else, then you no longer are entitled to the commission, which is kind of, then what's the point of even having it in a contract?
Exactly. Again, all I'm doing is building a fence around us. And so I'm just giving you guys some fence. That's all.
Yes, no, it's good. It's good. We appreciate that.
It's just a fence. A fence with a gate and the key is there to open, but hey, it's there. So
But really, they can, after an agent is showing a property to the buyer, the buyer can decide to sign.
No, what happens is if they decide, I don't want to work with you anymore, and you already showed them properties and all that, and they want to cancel with you, they give you a written notice to cancel, and then you have in your buyer rep agreement that you have that 90-day protection, and you send them, okay, I showed you these properties. If you end up buying one of these, then I'm entitled to the commission. Once they sign with someone else, that you no longer are entitled to that commission, even if they end up buying that property with the new person. If they go buy it on their own without an agent, then you could sue them to get the commission.
So that can be done within 90 days as well?
Kind of, but
yes. Or even past the 90 days. If they
past 90 days, yes. Past
no,
90 days they can sign, but within 90 days, you are entitled to the commission, in my view.
Well, where I am in Texas, if they sign with another agent, an exclusive, then that becomes null and void. That's how our buyer rep agreement is written here.
Correct. And in California, I'm not sure if it's fully there, but again, being an exclusive agreement, that's what that means, right? And so I don't know if it 100% takes you out, but the only way you're getting paid is by lawsuit. There is nothing we can do to get paid. And even if we sue and win, the next step is collecting. And the first
Yeah.
thing they'll tell you is I will file BK and we're done. So it's a rabbit hole. Again, if just consider a fence, and I would not in any shape or form count on any of this to protect you guys. None of this is helping us. It just gives them little bit of boundaries for them to not do anything. But if they want to leave you, cheat on you, there's nothing we can do. So,
and I would say if somebody doesn't want to work with you, why would you force them to work with you? It's not a good relationship. It will be, uncomfortable all the way to closing.
No, you don't want to work with them. That's fine. But if you have shown the property to them and they buy that property, then you are entitled for that commission.
Yeah, but again, like, how are you gonna collect that? You can't just
I
send
I understand the problems in collecting, but I understand that part. Yes.
Yeah.
so
I mean,
would
the
be a
only
problem.
reason they're gonna cancel is if they don't want to work with you, right? If you show them there's something happening between for them to cancel on you. I just think, like, if you sue them or go through, all they have to do is put a bad review, and that can affect your business more
Yes.
than whatever commission you were gonna make.
100%. And that's the first thing I tell you guys when you come and you want to sue for commission for your clients. And, we've had this issue before all of this, and it's happened where we put in offers and, they go with somebody else and get it. But it's the same thing. It's suing. The first thing they'll do is bad review. I've had people go make up fake accounts, put reviews, and there is no removing them. And it just hurts you, and it's not a fun thing. Don't get me wrong. Me as a broker, I tell everybody, I feel like I'm a scarecrow watching over all of the corn. I'm not allowed to scream or hit the birds that come and eat the corn, but yet I'm somehow responsible of making all these corns not go bad and eaten by the birds, which is crazy. And all this lawsuit, again, thinking about it, and if you try to put it in perspective, stemmed from homeowners signing a listing agreement, going through the process of a transaction, selling everything, and couple of years later saying, oh my God, I was screwed. I'm suing you. And they won. They signed the contract. So again, to me, I tell everyone, contracts are worthless to me these days. They mean nothing. It's just a fence. I need results and action to make the contracts work. And if the person who is not meeting their obligation on that contract is not suable, you're just spending money out of nowhere to get nothing. So we can cover that a little bit later, but I want to make sure we touch everything else on this too. Again, don't pre-fill this contract to help those clients that are hesitant. I would go through it one by one and let them know, each section, and make them be involved in filling this out. And let them know, hey, you don't want to do this, you don't want to have me represent you, that's fine. You can go represent yourself, but you have to go write an offer. You can write it on a napkin. You can go find something online, but that contract isn't for sure something that's going to have all of the things that will help protect you as a consumer and somebody watching out for you. Or you can go to an attorney and write a contract for you. And, my guess is minimum 2 hours for each offer to be written at, $300 to $400 an hour. And it's no guarantee that each offer you submit will be accepted. So you have to continue to do that until offer is accepted and get the help from the attorney to walk you through the closing. And that's going to cost you more, and you're paying that out of your pocket. So that's one way. Show them the SPBB. Let them know you're going to have this seller payment to broker included in every single offer, and it will show this. So let them know that. That way they'll understand that, hey, there is something, there is a support. Knowing all of their options makes signing this document much, much, much easier. And let them know hey, we have a 3% commission, 2% commission, but before I show any home to you, before we put any offer to you, I, as your agent, will know everything about that property. I will know if the seller is offering a concession to the buyer or if it's offering a compensation to this buyer's agent. We will know that before we look at the property so we can make our offers properly. Now, you're going to discuss with them, and we've discussed it, but you're going to let them know, hey, if a property that we're going to put an offer has something less than what we've agreed, we'll do a modification of terms for that property and we'll send this SPBB with it and seller will pay. Let them know that your goal is to have the seller pay for it. And, letting them know we don't agree with this new way of doing business as either, but we don't have a choice and we have to follow these new rules. And so that makes it a little bit more comfortable. They'll know it. And again, I personally think the hardest part of it is for agents to start that conversation and have that conversation. I don't think it's as hard of a conversation for the buyers to hear it, because the buyer already is heard. You got to pay a loan officer. The buyer already knows they have to pay for stuff. It's just something that's been changed, and we're explaining it to them and letting them know the options. It will make things much, much, much easier, I think. Now, again, we discussed the PSRA, which I don't have it here. It's a 3-property disclosure That's a 3-property buyer compensation agreement. So it's only good for 3 properties. Let them know, hey, these next 3 properties we're going to go look, or the first 3 properties we're going to look. I already know what the commission is going to be, 2.5% for all of them. I can do this for all 3. We'll go see them. You can see what I do, which my service is, how you like me. If you like it, then we can go for the full-blown one of, the 3 months one. Or if you want to continue it this way, I can do one every 3 properties or every single property, one buyer, one transaction at a time. I will submit it. And this could be useful if, you're showing 2 properties, 3 properties, and all of them are offering a different compensation. Fill it out. Make the client feel comfortable. Hey, I know how much this is paying. I'm going to go with an offer for this, for that. So they'll know comfortably what they're doing, and you're alleviating some of their stress and pressure. The goal is to get them to work with you honestly at first, right? And it should, after one property showing, you both will know whether you want to work with each other or not. So I'm sure on the next on the next showing, you could go prepared with the full one and discuss with them. And I'm pretty confident it will get signed. But again, it's going to be a harder conversation, which the agents have to be comfortable with having and knowing all of the options and why we're doing this, and able to convey to the buyers the services you provide, and that fact that you were being paid still prior to this by the seller, and most likely you will, but there are some instances that the seller isn't going to pay, or isn't going to pay as much. And some buyers will say, I don't want to pay you a penny more than what the seller is offering. And I know buyers for sure. You guys provide service, and I hear it from you, because your clients tell you, and you tell me is, they like your service, even though the seller is paying 1.5%. They still understand your value and want to pay you. And your discussion with them is either A, you can pay it from cash from your closing, or B, we can increase the price. And increase the price by 1% so that it covers the rest of the commission, and we'll put that into the contract. And yes, the lenders are okay with it. You still can do that. VA loans is a must because the buyers are not able to do that. So lenders understand, they've put in verbiage, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not opposing it. And we have done it before, so it should be okay. And again, let them know, because you have to use what the BS that CNN and CBS and all them have been giving them is all this is to lower the price for the buyers, consumers, to give them a better buying option. So, before, apparently our commissions were built into the price, but it isn't now. So regardless, before you were paying it, now you might pay, the purchase price is for $500,000, and you have agreed to a 2% commission from the buyers, and they end up having to pay for it because seller said no, and you're going to increase the price by a full 2%. Now the buyers is paying $510,000 for their price. And you could educate them and let them know, before you were paying 510 anyways, you just didn't have a choice on that negotiation. Before, you might have been paying $512,000 because the listing agent went and made a commission agreement of 5% already, and mine was 2.5%, and it was already built into the price. That's the BS that they fed people, along with you don't have to pay your agent. So those are all the things that have been blended, and we should use that. And I don't know, that's what the lawsuit says, that's what they're doing, right? Which I don't 100% agree, but that's part of it. So that's that single property we discussed. Okay, I think I might have covered all of the stuff that was missed in the beginning. Is there any questions that anyone has? I want to answer everything. Concerns, comments? Everyone good then? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right.
I can hear you too.
Sorry, it just like blanked out. I'm like, what just happened? Okay, so I think I see a lot of comments here that I have not. Let me look at some of these, see if I have concerns. Let me answer those. What's the minimum percentage we can charge? Like I said, is the $595 would be the minimum for you guys to go in there to cover your deal if you're deciding to do transactions for friends, family, or anything like that, unless you want to pay for it and work, but minimum that to sign commission. Yes, if a buyer is not willing to sign a representation agreement at first with you at an open house or at a buyer presentation agreement, yes, you will be wasting your time and explaining to them and educating them about the process and why they need to sign this. They may not like it and not sign it with you and decide to go, take everything you gave them and just go to some other agent and sign it. But that is not something that you need an agreement or anything to discuss. So that's the conversation that needs to be had. And unfortunately, we're going to have a lot of that with people until the consumer flattens out and understands the concept. And I think it's going to take at least 6 months from where we're not going to have to constantly repeat. You can't put the commission on the BRBC to be paid. So the question is, can we just put on the BRBC that the commission is going to be paid by the seller? No, we can't, because there is no promise that the seller is going to pay for it. and it has to be a specific dollar amount, and there is no way you know that the sellers are going to do that. The only way you can have that is if it's on a single property one, and that you've discussed it with the seller and they have said, nope, I'm paying or not paying, and this is the dollar amount, and you could have that kind of a conversation that, hey, this commission 2% is being paid by the seller and for this property. And then you could make that offer where this buyer isn't so obligated or concerned that they're making a contract with you.
I do have a question about which forms do you say do not pre-fill for them? Let the clients pre-fill, fill themselves. Which forms, Tony?
The buyer representation compensation agreement. I didn't say have them fill it out. What I said, fill it out with them so they don't, so they feel that they're not walking into some kind of a contract already and they're not having a say in it. You know, I want them to feel comfortable that they
that you're going through with them. Okay,
yes, and they made it right decision with you that I was part of this, just like a kid, you know, you give them an option, but both options is what you want, right? You made them make an option. That's
like filling up with them and talk about it so they don't just sign something and say later, oh, I didn't sign that, right? Okay.
correct. Or just feel forced into signing a 90-day contract at 2.5. They may not want to do that. They may be comfortable to sign a contract with you, but in their head, they'll be comfortable to sign it for 60 days. 90 days is just like marriage to them. I don't want to be committed for 3 months to this person, but 6 months, no problem. I'll sign it with you. 9, I don't want to, 90 days, I don't want to. Or 2.5 is way too much. I'm okay with 2%. And the cancellation part, you letting them know, hey, I understand this is somewhat long. I'll cancel it a little bit less than that. So that way they feel like, oh, okay, she's looking out for me. The agent understands it and wants to be, open to my opinions and my feelings.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification and the explanation. Okay.
No problem. Okay, so who actually enforced?
So Tony, one question.
Yes.
If going back to that discussion of as a buyer agent, you show a property and then they sign exclusive with somebody else and you can't do anything. Can you have a term in the representation saying that if the buyer choose to buy through another agent, then he is going to pay, say, $1,000 or something as a compensation for the work that is done?
No.
Of the agent?
No. I'm sorry. It's just a big no. There is some modifications we can do to the agreement, and that isn't there yet, and I'm gonna say no to it for now until we fly down this road a little bit longer and find out how things go. But for now, that's a really, really, really gray area, and I want to stay out of it. There's a question is what happens if the agreement expires? What do you do with that? If an agreement is expired and nothing has happened and no transaction, and the client wants to still continue to work with you, you're going to have to re-sign another 90-day contract with them to move, to show properties with them again and be your client. Even if you don't have a property ready to show, I would still try to extend that contract with them to keep them as your client in exclusivity as long as you can. Will real estate source try is part of the question, and I'm not 100% sure if I get it, but real estate source at no point is going to try to enforce or collect even the 595 from the clients if they ghost you and go with another agent. And if you did all the work, I'm not enforcing. I cannot enforce any of that. Again, if I enforce it, and like the other agent said, if I get a bad review for Real Estate Source, that's going to affect you guys. I turn my cheek all the time. Real Estate Source does something, it's affected with you guys. As you guys have seen, I'm very unpolitical. Even though I have my own opinions, and I stay out of most religions and most holidays and stuff. I keep it very, very, very mundane, even though I have my own opinions and feelings, and I know everybody does. But I try to keep Real Estate Source as neutral as possible. I don't endorse anyone. I don't do anything. And whoever I refer on the agents, on the website for you guys to be able to work with as third parties, I'm very meticulous with them. They will get yanked off this website as soon as I get weird feelings or anything. So again, I try to keep it as mundane as possible, and I do not enforce any of that. And I try to, again, talk with you guys to not enforce much of that either. So again, this kind of is not yet for commercial. All this we discuss is for residential. Again, I don't know if we've no flyers, no commissions on flyers. I want everything. Again, it has to be it has to be communicated directly to the agent via text, an agent that's asking you and communicating with you, and it's going from one agent to another agent, not from an agent to a bunch of agents who are not soliciting against this property, trying to find out info and if there's commission. You can't blast email it to a bunch of agents, but you can't email an agent back who's asking you a question about the property. Or if they're asking you a question and not about the compensation, you could still let them know after everything, oh yeah, and the seller is willing to pay up to 2%. And obviously you can say it over the phone. As far as being on the internet anywhere, no internet anywhere, as it requires too many rules for it to be published on the website. It requires 2 clicks before an agent can see the commission or the consumer, and that 2-click can be scrutinized and manipulated if it's on the internet, because you're able to sometimes reach a page without the directions you've put in for it. And if somebody wants to cheat, they can go to the other page, which puts you in violations. And I have, they're sitting there ready to try to fine us. Yes, you can have the SPBB obviously included with your offer, so you can show it to your client and let them see that you're including it. And the buyer representation agreement, page 5 of it should be included in your offers, so that the buyer, the agent, and the seller know that yes, you have an agreement with them for this. Next question. Dual agency, yes, still legal in California, but you have to, again, have the buyer still sign a buyer representation agreement with you with an agreed amount of dollar on it, and you can still represent them. Again, I don't know. I want to make sure you cannot help a client who does not want representation, and you cannot provide them an empty blank RPA to fill it out, or answer questions on if they come in with an off blank offer to show you, say, hey, I downloaded this from whatever website. I have some questions on how to fill out these other sections. Your answer is a no. You're starting to work as an agent. They need to provide all that stuff to you. again, unrepresented buyers are not going to be clients that the E&Os have not, errors and omission hasn't really discussed it yet, or I don't know if they have made changes to it. But an unrepresented buyer that comes to you can still sue you and can still sue the seller if they write their own offer. Nothing will stop us from getting sued under none of these forms, or even if we have a document signed by them stating that they are not going to take legal action under, and you would have to address what problems you're covering in this, that they can't take legal actions, but that document is unenforceable in court of law. So there is no protection, just a fence that has a key and a gate to it. And you cannot put a flyer in the listing with the commission. One agent mentioned somebody had put it inside the lockbox. You cannot do that. You can't have it on the refrigerator, in the refrigerator. Those are, just, it has to be communicated directly to the agent. Again, no giving an RPA to the buyers to fill it out. They must do it themselves. I'm not sure. There's an agent said they've seen brokers saying that we don't have to have documentations to show properties. The only way you don't need a buyer representation agreement is if you're not a realtor. You haven't paid your realtor dues. You're not a member of NAR. You're not a member of association, and you're not using CAR forms. And you're not working for Real Estate Source, because Real Estate Source is, member, and you can't do any of that without it, nor can you do that at Remax, KW, EXP, or any of them. There are, I don't know, some small brokerages that may be popping up that are non-affiliate to combat this in their mind, but those brokerages were also out there before, and consumers had the choice to use them. I don't think we're going to see too many. I don't think that we're going to see too many big companies moving out of it. Most of the companies we deal with are gonna stay with NAR because, again, being part of NAR is the only way that's preventing us from getting sued by every single clients that we have had so far, is being part of that settlement and says, hey, you can't sue these people. And there are some states, and I don't know if anyone in California, and there is some in California, like 19, 20 of them. The NAR settlement was, they also didn't do a favor to some people. Some of the big brokerages, and I can't remember off of the top of my head, but it was like maybe 20 billion or some large number, a few $1 billion in sales in that 2002 period where this lawsuit stemmed from. Some of those brokerages are not included in this settlement offer, and NAR didn't include them. And, some of them are the big brand companies we all know in some states. I know there is like 19 or 20 in this state, and they're big, but they were not included in that settlement. And those guys may get upset and turn their cheek and say, we don't want to be part of NAR anymore, and not do it. But I haven't seen that yet. And if they do that, then they would all have to have some kind of a contract made up. And us that are NAR members, use CAR form, we're going to have, problems accepting forms and, cohesiveness working together, because we're not all using the same documents. Imagine if every offer we get has their own set of contract, we then have to actually sit there and read every single line in that contract. Because this contract that we have, you know, for me, for most of you, we kind of haven't memorized. I know not the new one, but the old one. We knew where the pitfalls were. We knew if somebody was going to stick something in there to screw us or the seller, we knew where it was at. We were looking right on it. But now if somebody writes their own offer, who knows? Page 48, paragraph 2 might say a lot of things that's going to cost a lot of money. And so we're going to have all problems if we're not using similar contracts. So to answer that question, I know it was a little bit off, but that's that. Yes, some brokers are not going to allow dual agency, and it is going to be mainly not because of liability, because the liability isn't changing in any shape or form based on what we're doing, but the liability isn't about more liability, it's more about commission and money. So if you're going to end up double ending a transaction, and I mentioned it to you guys on one of, I don't know if this group was there, but you know, you may just do for $595 here. If an agent, you know, you just need to move this property, right? And the buyer is only going to give you this and is willing to do dual agency, willing to represent you, but it might be $600 or $1,000 or whatever. You can do that, and you can do that here at Real Estate Source, right? You could put a minimum of $600 and you can represent them, do the work just to move the property. But Remax KW is not going to allow $595. They're not going to allow $2,500. They're not going to take that liability. $2,500 is minimum they want to collect from a check, right? An agent wants to get paid. So for them, isn't going to be a minimal this much. And so, yes, lots and lots. And I guarantee you, none of the listings with the big brand companies, you're going to see the listing agent ever again at those open houses for the most part, I don't think. And so that, to answer that question, I don't know if I helped with that one, but let's go back to that's two is still okay. This you cannot on the BRBC, the buyer representation agreement, write 2 to 3%. It has to be a clear number. It has to be 2%, 2.25%, 2.5%, or 3%. There is no variables in there. You know, numbers are going to be obviously go up and down based on agents and how much they're going to do. Okay. I think that's all of the questions also in the side. I've done my best to cover as much as I can. Is there anything that I have not covered for you guys, since you were a little bit, it was my apology, didn't let you into the meeting. I'm sorry.
I have a question, Tony. The contract that you show us, do you have it so we can kind of like use it for guidance and reference while we get used to filling it out?
The buyer representation agreement?
Yeah, do you have a copy?
I will fill one out. The one I have already, I'll fill it out and send it to you guys so you can have it where it's been filled out. Yes, I will have one and a listing agreement filled out with the few
Yeah,
items.
just to use it as reference. I mean, I pretty much got it, but I think I want to make sure I want to make sure I don't make mistakes. Sometimes I feel I've been doing this for over 20 years and I feel like a new agent and I don't want to make mistakes.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And forgot to tell the other group, but everybody knows, please send it to me. Let me do a quick review if you want also before it goes out. I can say yay or nay and give some opinions.
Oh, that was my next question. If we can rely on you cannot review and
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
Absolutely. Send it to me, but just please don't just send it to me from zip form and expect me to do it. If you send it or email it, just shoot me a text so that say, hey Tony, I sent you an offer, please look at it, or this I'll jump on it quickly because I don't want it to be waiting for me to go to a client unless it's something you're doing just for sample. And if it waits for like 2 hours, you're not waiting for me and I will give my response in it. So that way it's for your record or whatever. But yes, send it to me. I will review just to be sure. I try not to post these documents on the website.
No, I know.
Either email, I don't want CAR them coming after me for, whatever
I
it is,
know.
trademark or whatever.
Better to
They
be
sue me
sorry
or
than
something.
yeah. I
So-
understand. I get it. So thank you so much for your help. And yeah, this really helping.
Perfect. I will have this also recorded so you guys can look at it later on. And I think that's it with that. If there's no other questions, I will send out an email with all the stuff I talked about in paper so that you guys can have that also. Just a quick reference on it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tony.
All right, everybody. Nice talking with you. Bye-bye.
Okay, same.
Bye-bye.
Bye.